All right, tonight, closing arguments are wrapping up in the trial of two paramedics facing charges for Elijah McClain's death in 2019. As a matter of fact, the prosecution just wrapped up rebuttal. Thanks for joining us for Denver 7 News at 5. I'm Micah Smith.
I'm Jason Grenauer. That means things getting handed over to the jury, and the simple question those jurors now have to answer: did the paramedics' actions play a role in McClain's death, or were they simply following protocol? Denver 7's Danielle Kreuter is outside the courthouse in Adams County tonight.
And Danielle, you were sitting in on closing arguments. What were the main takeaways?
Well, Micah and Jason, during the closing arguments, the prosecution arguing that both paramedics made a series of wrong decisions that night that they knew the risk of, and those decisions cost McClain his life. Meanwhile, defense attorneys pointing the finger at law enforcement and the information that officers gave paramedics that night that led them to believe ketamine would be the best treatment. Now, the main case, or the main claim in the prosecution's case, was that paramedics did not give McClain a proper medical assessment. They say that choice led the paramedics to decide to use ketamine, while the prosecution says McClain was barely moving and was easily restrained by officers. They noted the prosecution's medical expert agreed there was no medical purpose for the drug.
There was no justification not to assess Mr. McClain. There was no justification to give someone who is not moving a sedative. There is no justification to ignore a lifeless patient for 6 minutes before you try to take his pulse.
Cooper's defense attorneys spoke first in their closing, pointing out that systemic issues with policing and the medical field existed back then. He critiqued how vague definitions of phrases like agitated, non-compliant, and out of control led the paramedics to follow the protocol they had been trained to do. Both Cooper and Chikuniak's attorneys said the training at the time was, if someone is showing signs of excited delirium and is not given ketamine, they could die.
The relevant question is whether it was reasonable for these two gentlemen to believe that he was suffering from excited delirium, that he was acting consistent with what their training and their protocol told them was excited delirium.
The defense team encouraged the jury to not make their decision based on hindsight of what we all know now, but based on the information the paramedics had at the time. Again, wrapping up just a few moments ago. This case will then go to the jury. We will continue to follow this case closely, and we'll let you know what they decide. For now, reporting live in Adams County, I'm Danielle Kreuter, Denver 7.
Now, as we wait, looking closer, the trial of Cooper and Chikuniak has garnered significant attention after two previous trials of 3 Aurora police officers involved in McClain's death resulted in mixed verdicts. Just last month, an Adams County jury found Aurora police officer Nathan Woodyard not guilty in the death of Elijah McClain. He was the officer who first made contact with McClain in 2019 and was accused of putting him in a neck hold that played a role in McClain's death. In October, Randy Rodema was found guilty of criminally negligent homicide and third-degree assault. APD says he was terminated from his position following that conviction. His sentencing is scheduled for January 5th. Now, in that same trial, former officer Jason Rosenblatt was found not guilty on all charges.
And as jury deliberations begin, we promise to keep you updated on air and online as we get closer to a verdict. In the meantime, you can catch up on this trial's developments as well as the prior two officers' trials on Denver7.com.